Hi there, Smart Drivers. Rick with Smart Drive Test talking to you today about route planning, or sometimes called trip planning in Canada. This is mostly for regional and long haul drivers who are going to be gone overnight or for days at a time. Essentially, when dispatch gives you your information about where your drops are, you plug that into Google Maps, my favorite piece of software on the internet in this day and age. Figure out how long the trip is, where your drops are, and how long each leg of that trip is going to take you. Now, when you get dispatched, you may get some of the information, you may get all of the information. In my experience, most of the time I only get part of the information. So what happens is I get the outbound freight. As you're out dropping off the freight, as you probably will, dispatch is working on getting you another load, or whoever the load coordinator is, to bring freight back. So when you get to your final drop on the way out, they'll say, okay, we have another pickup for you, head up there and get that. So today we have a trip planned for you from Kenora, Ontario, way up there in the north. Yes, Kenora is still in Ontario. Over to Winnipeg, you got a drop in Winnipeg at a plastics manufacturer, and then you head over to Regina, you have a drop at a farm equipment place at Brant, and then you head up to Saskatoon, you have a pickup in Saskatoon. By the time you get to Saskatoon though, you're out of hours. So you overnight at the petrol pass because that's where you get fuel. You get fuel there, you pick up your load of pallets in the morning at Costco, head back to Winnipeg. So what we're gonna do today is we're gonna go over to the computer, we're gonna go into Google Maps, show you the different legs of that trip, give you some information about how to do that trip, things that you need to consider, how long it's going to take you, and how you figure that according to hours of service regulations in Canada and the total kilometers that you are going to drive for that trip. This trip is 1,000 kilometers, so it's a 2-day trip minimum. Depending on delays and how fast you get in and out of your drops and pickups and fuels and those types of things, it could be 2 and a bit days, which is probably more what it's going to be. So we're gonna head over to the computer. We'll be right back with that information. Stick around. Hi there, Smart Drivers. Welcome back. Rick at the computer talking to you today about trip planning, or route planning as it's sometimes referred to. We have a trip planned out for you from Kenora, Ontario over to Winnipeg, Manitoba, and then we're going to head over to Saskatchewan, first to Regina and then Saskatoon. 2 drops. We have a drop in Winnipeg, a drop in Regina, and then we have a pickup at the Costco in Saskatoon as well. By the time you get to Saskatoon, you are going to be out of hours and going to overnight and get fuel at the Petra Pass there in Saskatoon. You're probably going to do your pickup in the morning, first thing at Costco. Costco does open quite early and starts receiving and shipping at about 4:30 in the morning. You might also have an appointment, but you're only picking up recycled pallets in Saskatoon at Costco and taking them back to Winnipeg. So you could pick those up, they could be loaded on quite quickly, and you could be on your way down the road, depending on how busy Costco is. It does get pretty busy in the morning at 4. So you might have to overnight in Winnipeg on your way back to Kenora. However, with a push, you could probably make this trip in 2 days. You do know it is 2 days because if we look at the details here, you can see that the total number of hours in a car or light truck is 21 hours, 51 minutes. So you know that the driving time in a big truck, depending on how heavy you're going to be, coming out of Kenora into Winnipeg and over to Regina. So I would budget probably 25, 26 hours for this trip, because if it's 22 hours in a car or light truck, it's probably going to be 25, 26 hours of driving time, just driving time in a big truck, depending on how heavy you are. Now you're on the flat, so it's going to be a little better. You're probably going to average 85 or 86 kilometers per hour for the whole trip. The determining factor will be your drops and pickups. Those are going to determine how long it's going to take, whether you're going to have to stay over in Winnipeg on the return trip or whether you can push it through and get home in 2 days. When you budget for drops and those types of things, budget an hour at each drop. It could be longer depending on whether they make you wait in the dock and those types of things. I have found that that has happened with van trailers, that you end up sitting around for a while, and sometimes it can be up to a couple of hours before you get either unloaded or loaded and on down the road. So budget that as well to get into the yard in the morning and pick up your trailer. and get your paperwork filled out and actually get on the road can take you anywhere from an hour to 2 hours as well, depending on whether the load's ready. You can find the paperwork, your truck, trailer, those types of things. All of that can have an influence on how much time you need in order to get your truck ready, get your paperwork done, and get on down the road. One of the other factors that's going to influence how long your trip is going to take is whether you get pulled into scales and those types of things. And some of the busier places are actually going to pull you in, and you're going to take some time. You're not just going to roll over the scale. There's going to be scales outside of Winnipeg and those types of places, and if you just roll through, it's not a big deal. It's just a minor inconvenience of pulling off the road, going through the scale, and carrying on down the road. Now, if you get pulled in and they want to look at your paperwork, you're probably going to have to budget another hour. So you always want a buffer of time. So probably just looking at this 25 hours of driving time, and you're probably looking at 30, 32, maybe even 35 hours for the whole trip. We look at just the overall destinations here. So we've got Kenora, Winnipeg, Acrylon Plastics in Winnipeg that we're going to do a drop. We have a drop at Brant Industries, which is a farm equipment place in Regina. Going up to Saskatoon to the Petro Pass, and then the Costco. We're going to pick up pallets, and we're going to head back to Winnipeg, and then deadhead home to Kenora. And then we click on the details down here at the bottom on Google Maps, and that will give us all of the details of where we're going, directions, and those types of things. Of course, in this day and age, most of you are going to have GPS, either a commercial version or you're going to have the GPS that's on your phone. Now, no, if you have a phone, it's not a commercial GPS and will take you down non-truck routes. Make sure you stay off non-truck routes with big trucks, because unfortunately, authorities, police, CVSE, DOT, depending on who is policing trucks, have the right to pull you over and give you a ticket for being on a non-truck route. So pay attention to that as well if you're using a GPS that is not a commercial GPS. Now we can see the first leg of the trip here. Kenora, Ontario over to Winnipeg is 2 hours 36 minutes. It's probably going to take you 3 hours, 3 hours 15, as I said, depending on how heavy you're loaded. If you're pulling Super Bs or you're pulling a tridem, it's going to take you a bit longer than that, even more than if you're just running tandem-tandem. And then from Winnipeg over to Regina is 5 hours 48 minutes, which is probably going to be closer to 7 hours for you in a big truck. Get unloaded, and then up to Saskatoon, where you're going to overnight. You're going to get fuel at the Petro Pass, and getting fuel can take you anywhere from half an hour to 45 minutes, depending on the size of the tanks on your truck. If they're 150-gallon tanks, not so long as 300-gallon tanks. Obviously, all of these are high-pressure hoses at truck stops and whatnot. As well, you're going to have to put DEF fuel. Most newer trucks are all going to have DEF tanks on them, diesel exhaust fluid, and it's just a matter of filling up that tank as well. There's two fuel gauges on the dash. One is for DEF and one is for regular diesel fuel. The DEF fuel, one tank of DEF fuel will last about 6 tanks of diesel fuel, but it's easier to fill that up if you have bulk DEF fuel. You certainly don't want to be dealing with those jugs that you have to at some truck stops and whatnot, but you do have to put DEF fuel in, and it can take you anywhere from up to 45 minutes to get fuel and then get into the truck stop and get parked. And just on that note of getting parked and looking for places to park and sleep overnight, you usually want to get into these places fairly early, because in Canada it's much more difficult to find truck stops and parking and those types of things, more so than it is in the States, because of the interstate system, and truck stops are just more well developed in the United States than they are in Canada. Now, if you know where you're going, it's not going to be so bad, because there's a lot of pullouts in those types of places that you can park and whatnot. But in Canada, truck stops for the most part tend to be in major cities. If they do have parking, some of it could be limited. There are places where if you are not in there by 6 o'clock at night, there's just really no chance that you're going to get parking in some of these truck stops. So it's a good idea to know. Maybe, you could even phone ahead and ask what the parking lot looks like and those types of things. But parking overnight in a big truck is definitely more challenging in Canada than it is in the United States. So plan accordingly for that as well. So Saskatoon, and then we're going to head back. We're going to pick up our load in the morning, and we're going to head back to Winnipeg. And we can see here from the Costco in Saskatoon back to Winnipeg is 8 hours and 3 minutes, and it's probably closer to 9.5 hours, depending on traffic, how heavily you're loaded and those types of things. You do have a load of pallets on, so you're not going to be too bad in terms of weight coming back to the Costco in Winnipeg. And again, it's a matter of getting unloaded and how busy they are at Costco. And then you might just overnight in Winnipeg and head home to Kenora in the morning, because you can see here that the last leg of the trip from Winnipeg back to Kenora is 2 hours and 44 minutes. So it's three and a half hours. So if you got up fairly early, 3, 4, 5 o'clock, you could be home by 9, 10 o'clock in the morning very easily, deadheading from Winnipeg back to Kenora, Ontario. So in conclusion, today we went over route planning, or sometimes called trip planning in Canada. We plugged everything into for our trip from Kenora, Ontario over to Winnipeg, over to Regina, up to Saskatoon, back to Winnipeg, and then deadheaded home to Kenora. We figured out that the trip was 2,100 kilometers. In Canada, according to hours of service regulations, you can drive 900 to 1,000 kilometers a day, depending on traffic, delays, getting in and out of loading docks, and those types of things. So that's your total distance that you can drive for the day. The other thing that you have to figure out is the amount of fuel that your truck holds in Canada. Most trucks are going to hold 550 liters of fuel. Some trucks will hold twice that. They'll have the bigger tanks on them, but for the most part, 550 liters. Most big trucks, for the purposes of route planning, you want to figure out 40 liters per 100 kilometers. So you're going to know that a 550 liter tank on your truck is going to get you about 1,400 kilometers. So every time you get around the 1,000 kilometer mark, you're going to have to start looking for fuel to put fuel in that big truck. And just on that note, don't run a big truck less than a quarter tank. First and foremost, it's for your own safety, especially if you're running in the wintertime and those types of things and you end up in the ditch. You want some fuel in that truck so you can keep it warm and be nice and toasty while you're waiting for people to come and get you. The other thing is that if you let it run below a quarter tank, the sediment and whatnot in the bottom of the tank gets up into the filters and will prematurely wear out your filters. So keep it above a quarter tank. Finally, we plugged everything into Google Maps, gave you buffers of time, how long it's going to take you to get out of the yard, how long it's going to take you at loading docks and those types of things. Talked a little bit about parking and the challenges of finding parking in Canada. You're going to overnight in Saskatoon. You're going to head back to Winnipeg. Now, the other thing that we talked about was the fact that this is 2 days, probably 2 and a bit days, because in order to do this trip 2,100 kilometers in 2 days is going to be a real push. So you're going to overnight in Winnipeg, get up in the morning, and then run the 3.5 hours back to Kenora, Ontario. So that gives you some information about how to route plan and trip plan when dispatch sends you off in your big truck to deliver freight and pick up freight and come back. And again, as I said, dispatch won't give you the whole trip. Most of the time what's going to happen is they're going to have freight going out, and as you're working on dropping off the freight on your way out, they're going to be looking for a load for you to come back. I'm Rick with Smart Drive Test. Thanks very much for watching. If you like what you see here, share, subscribe, leave a comment down in the comment section. All of that helps us out. As well, hit that thumbs up button. Check out the videos below, especially if you're endeavoring to get your CDL license. Lots of great information to help you be successful in attaining your license. And for those CDL drivers working towards a career as a truck or bus driver, lots of good information for your daily tasks that you will be encountering when you start working as a trucker or bus driver. If you're on a mobile device, check out the cards in the upper right hand corner. Those two will give you links to the videos. And while you're up there, hit that subscribe button. Question for my smart drivers: what software do you use to figure out your route plan and how long it's going to take you to complete a trip after dispatch gives you that information? Do you use Google Maps? Do you use your GPS, your phone, or whatnot? Leave a comment down in the comment section there. All of that helps out the new drivers that are coming into the industry. Thanks again for watching. Good luck on your road test. Remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great day. Bye now. Question for my